So today is July 28th, 2021. I'm Leah Cohen, the Oral History Manager at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library. And on behalf of PNNL, I am pleased to interview Sergeant Victoria Cobbett. Sergeant Cobbett served with the Woman Marine Detachment 2, Marine Corps Air Station at Cherry Point, North Carolina, from 1970 to 1973. She worked in computer operations at the time that computers were, as she phrased it, as big as fridges. I would also like to introduce the husband of Sergeant Cobbett, also Sergeant Gary Cobbett, who served at the headquarters and the headquarters Squadron 28, 2nd Marine Air Wing, also at the Marine Corps Air Station at Cherry Point, North Carolina. So thank you both for coming in, and thank you for your willingness to share your story.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
So we'll begin at the beginning. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, 1952.
And what was it like growing up in Chicago at the time?
We actually moved from Chicago when I was quite small, and we moved to a small town, and then we moved to California, and then in 1957 or 58 we moved to Lamont, where I lived the remainder of my life and where we continue to live.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Was it a nice community in Lamont?
It was a very small community, yeah. It was kind of a farming community, blue collar. A population, I believe, when we moved in was between 2,000 and 4,000 people, so it was quite small. I still remember when we got the first stoplight.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Lamont Public Grade School and Lamont Township High School.
Oh, okay. And you had written that your father had been a World War II veteran. Did he talk a lot about his experience?
No, he really didn't. He really didn't. He passed away when I was quite young. He passed away when I was 15. But he was the commander of the VFW Post 5819 in Lamont for, I think, 1 or 2 years. So that's one of my first exposures to military personnel, people that had served.
And so both from the veterans group, but do you also have other relatives, friends of the family?
Yeah, actually my son served in the Marine Corps. My daughter served in the Army. My cousin Becky served in the Air Force. And my uncle was in the Navy. My other uncle was in the Coast Guard. But then they're going back to World War II in Korea, so a lot of people served there. Yeah.
Wow. Which subjects did you like in school growing up?
I liked math and science.
Yeah. And I think you had written that you'd been part of the Girl Scouts. What was that like?
Yeah. My mother was a Girl Scout leader. Well, I think I mentioned before camera that I have 3 sisters. So my mother was a Girl Scout leader. So we were all, in those days, there weren't a lot of activities for girls to participate in. There wasn't the sports that there are now and things like that. So we did a lot of Girl Scouts, camping, what else? Rock collecting, bird watching, sewing, you name it. And in 1965, my mother, Gloria, and West, Arvella Monchek, and Shirley Carlson took 31 girls. We camped our way to Camp Rockwood Girl Scout Camp in Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And in those days, you had shorts or you had a skirt with, there was no wash and wear. It was all ironed with starch, so we had to iron our clothes. We had to have 2 of everything, so we could wash one night and wash it the next. And we camped our way around Washington, D.C. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
It sounds wonderful, especially for 2 weeks, a stretch of time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Do you think you enjoyed organized and structured activities, like being part of the Girl Scouts with the...
Yeah, I suppose I did, yeah. I like to be involved. I like to keep busy.
Yeah.
As you can tell.
Did you like doing sports in your spare time? I don't mean a formal team.
We didn't really have any kind of sports activities, and I did some gymnastics, but I'm not really athletically inclined, I guess you would put it. I'm athletic, but I'm not. I did some gymnastics. We'll leave it at that. I really couldn't play baseball and We had some archery. There was a program called GAA, Girls Athletic Association, that met once a week on Fridays. And sometimes you play basketball, or sometimes they play softball, or sometimes they shoot a bow and arrow, but I wasn't that skilled at it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you participated. Yeah.
Yes, I did, yeah. That was in high school. Yeah.
What did you do after you graduated from college?
Oh, well, I had gotten my degree in nursing, so I worked on a telemetry unit in a hospital, and then when I got my baccalaureate degree, I worked in the emergency room at the same hospital. So I was an ER nurse.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'm a little confused. Like, had you been in college for 1 year and then you decided to enlist?
Yes, yes, that's how it was. I went to a year to, after I graduated from high school, I went a year to school, and that was during the protests and the riots. That was in 1969, and it just seemed to me that people didn't really appreciate our country anymore. There was just an attitude of disrespect, and I couldn't understand why. And I know on my dorm floor there was a young lady that had been rescued from Vietnam, and she was very appreciative. She had some strange habits, but she loved being in this country. And the girl across the hall from me, her brother had died in Vietnam, and she wasn't really appreciative of the riots either, because they were disrespecting her brother. And as you well know, a lot of Vietnam veterans, most of them were disrespected when they came home. So I decided I would join the military and see what was going on. I had always kind of leaned that way, I guess, thought about it, but I went and did it.
Oh, wow.
We went down to the post office in Joliet on Scott Street, and actually I hadn't selected the Marine Corps specifically, but the Air Force recruiter was out to lunch, and there was a man in this wonderful uniform with the dress blue trousers, and he said, "Well, why don't you join the Marines?" And I said, "I didn't even know they had women Marines." He said, "Oh yeah," and so a month later I was on my way to Paris Island.
What did your parents think about your decision, or your sisters?
They didn't really have a feeling about it either way. I don't know that they discouraged me or that they encouraged me. It was kind of something new and different. I think I was the first one of females in our family to go in the service. My cousin Becky hadn't gone in yet, but yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So would you like to talk about basic training at Paris Island?
If I can remember it, that's 50 years ago. It was one of the hardest things I ever did in my entire life. It was very hard, but it was wonderful too, and it helped mold me into the person I am today. I mean, it taught you to be prompt and reliable and strong and independent, and respect and appreciation and pride in being a Marine.
So it's like it inculcated very good values.
Yes, it did.
What was the physical fitness like in marching or other activities?
Well, back in those days, women were trained differently than the men. Whenever I am with a group of Marines, we always laugh because I had a PT skirt, a physical therapy skirt, and it was this blue skirt that buttoned up over shorts. It was so lame. Oh my gosh. But anyway, when we would run, we got to take off the skirt and do our running. But we didn't have to carry a pack like the men did. We never had to qualify with any weapons. My DD-214 has, I believe, a program, Image Development for the Woman Marine. So while they're shooting M14s, I'm learning how to hold gloves and serve tea.
Well, that's what I was reading about that course in the history of the woman Marines, that like grooming, and they installed
Yes.
a grooming center.
Yeah, I was issued a girdle. Yes.
Was there any pushback from, let's say, the drill instructors or any of the girls? Or?
No.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I think a lot of us were scared to open our mouth and say anything, because it was a completely foreign experience for me. I had never imagined anything like that. It was scary and it was thrilling at the same time, and it was wonderful. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but it was an amazing experience, something I've obviously never forgotten, and something I'm very proud of. I'm proud that I'm a Marine.
So you're like you're learning a whole new world.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're dropped into this world that's completely different from anything you've ever experienced.
And what were the other girls like? And were you meeting, young women from
All over the
different
country,
countries?
yeah, yeah. My roommate, Paula Williams, she was from South Carolina, I believe. My roommate, my bunkmate, she was, we were alphabetical. I always remember Kathy Measles and Sandy Malley. Kathy Measles was the bare minimum height. I want to say she was like 4'9". And Sandy Malley always said that she was 5'11" 3/4. She never wanted to say she was 6 foot, but because we were alphabetical, Sandy Malley stood next to Kathy Measles, and so there was this big disparity of height. And I was W West, so I was across the squad bay from them. We were squad bays back then. We didn't have two-man rooms like in dorms like they have today. We had a squad bay.
How many women were shared the squad bay?
I want to say there was 30 in our platoon. We started out with 30. I can't remember how many actually graduated, but I should have brought my book with. I completely forgot to bring my book with.
Yeah. That's okay. And what was it like for you being in the South? Like, did you have any leave off the base?
Not during boot camp, no.
No, yeah.
Not Marines. Becky did. She was in the Air Force.
How long did the boot camp last?
I believe it was either 8 or 10 weeks. We got out I went in the end of September, and then we got out either right after Thanksgiving. I always remember eating at attention. That was something that was completely foreign, to eat at attention.
What does that mean?
You know what I'm talking about. You had to eat at attention. You had to sit there and eat at attention. And you could, you weren't supposed to look around or move. Usually it meant you were in trouble for something, but in the beginning I think they were just training us.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had to eat at attention.
Were you taught to learn how to handle any ammunition, like a pistol or I don't know what?
No, we did get to go to the firing range once and watch the men shoot. It was quite different back then. It wasn't the same as it was now, yeah.
And it also sounds like there's quite a variety of situations. Like, I was surprised recently to interview a World War II veteran who's a physical therapist, and there I think they taught the girls to shoot grenades, and got her a little bit worried, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
It's really surprised me,
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. Okay, so what were the other uniforms like? Like, what were the different uniforms that you wore?
Well, we had basically we had a utility uniform. It was called utilities. It was a navy blue trousers and this light blue top that it looked, and a navy cover. It looked like we were in the Navy. Nobody liked those, but that's what we did field day with. And then we had a winter uniform and a summer uniform, and our summer uniform was a seersucker, a green and white seersucker, two-piece. They had just changed over from a one-piece dress, and then the winter uniform was a dark marine green wool jacket and shirt and skirt. There were no trousers for our regular uniforms.
So no.
Right,
Yeah.
we weren't supposed to wear our field day uniforms away from the barracks.
Okay, I see. And
Unless we did wear them the one time when we went through the Quonset hut to learn gas masks, where they teach you how to survive gas, and then you have to take off your mask and sing the first verse to the Marine Corps hymn. Then you got to run out of there like this and not touch anything because there's mucus coming out of your eyes and your ears and your mouth. But the men, they had to sing all 3 verses.
That's a bit easier on the
Yeah,
women.
yeah.
Was your drill instructor like a man or a woman?
We had 3 female drill instructors, and then we had 1 male drill instructor for drill.
Okay.
So, but in the barracks we had 3 females, yeah.
And were the women's barracks like separate from the men?
Yeah, we were on a completely separate part of the island. We really didn't have any communication with the men except for when we went over to use the gas mask hut. And then depending on if you went to church on Sunday, what church you went to, sometimes you would see the men. There were 2 basic churches that they used, but if someone had a particular religion, they were allowed to go to that, and then they would see them. Quite frankly, that was the last thing I was thinking about was men. I mean, getting up at 5 in the morning, and and if you had long hair, you either had to get it cut or you had to wear a wig. And just by chance, my mother threw an old wig in my bag when I left, because there were girls, they just took the back of their hair and they cut it right off, because you could, like now they can wear it in a bun or in a braid, but according to them, that wasn't fashionable back then. So you either had to have it short because it could touch your top of your collar, but it couldn't cover it, or you had to wear a wig. So I had this funky wig that I wore all through boot camp that I had to jam on my head in the morning. And they also insisted that we put makeup on too. I mean, there were some rules. I don't know if I can say this on camera. We would have locker box inspections where you would stand on your locker box and they would check to make sure that your legs were shaved.
So
grooming was very important.
Important. And that's what I was
Yes.
reading here, that they wanted to improve the image of the women Marines, both internally but also to the public at large. I mean, did you feel that? Like, was there a stigma in some ways, not in the like in the public at large, about women being part of the service forces?
Oh yeah, women in the service were either considered lesbians or whores. So you had two options.
So they're trying to tidy everybody up.
So it was one or the other. Yeah, the idea that we did it out of joy to serve our country or patriotism was apparently a low fourth place option.
I was reading about the so-called garden party. Was this something you experienced?
Oh,
Yeah.
always. Yeah, that's basically yard work. That's
Yeah,
what a garden party is. Yeah, in fact, see, the men, they got to either stencil their name and their number on their uniforms, or did you stencil it, or was it a stamp too? We got name tags that originally we had to write our name on them, and we had to sew them and everything. Well, then when we got the printed ones, because then you had to write how exactly your military signature, which was your full name, your middle initial, and your last name, which is why I'm Victoria on everything. Well, that's my real name. But so when we got the pre-printed ones back, then we had to change over and get rid of the old ones. Well, I was in a hurry for something. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to go have a smoke break. I don't know. Anyway, so I was biting the thread to pull my old name tag off, and I didn't think anybody was watching, so I spit the piece of thread in the grass. Oh my gosh! So I had to get a comb and comb the grass.
Oh my God!
To get that little teeny piece of thread out, and then anything else that was there. That was my garden party that day. It was no fun, let me tell you.
No, it wasn't a barbecue.
No. Oh no, that's not it.
What was the? I was reading that there was what did they call it? The field night.
Oh, the field day? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's house cleaning the barracks.
The
Yeah.
barracks. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had like buffers that you could plug in that they were just sitting there so we could look at them and be tortured, because we actually had a buff with sanitary products. That's what we had to buff the floor with. After it was washed, we did the waxing with those, yes. You know, they break you down to build you up again.
Yeah.
It's all part of a big plan, I guess. Some things were overboard, I think, but I survived.
That's right, and got
Yes.
took good away from it.
Yes.
Yeah. And was it part of the was this prior to an inspection when you had to do field day?
Oh no, field day was every Thursday.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there usually was inspections too, but irregardless, field day was every Thursday. That continued at Cherry Point when I was at my regular base. When I was out of boot camp, field day was every Thursday. Yes.
No matter
what.
where you were.
Yes.
Were there any African Americans in your unit?
Oh yeah, Paula was African American. Yeah, we were friends. In fact, she went to Cherry Point with me, so we kind of remained Squad Bay friends. And then she was in a different unit, though. I worked with computers, as I said, and Paula was with the air wing. So I was kind of with headquarters, and she was with the wing. Even though we had the same barracks, because of work schedules, we didn't get to see one another that often. On the Women Marines' birthday and the Marine Corps birthday.
Oh, yeah.
And then occasionally we'd work our schedules so we could just go out and reminisce and see how the other one was doing.
Yeah, catch up with each other.
Exactly, yeah.
That sounds nice. Well, did you find it being a little different having 1 year of college? Like, were you typically 1 year older than most of the other girls, or not so much?
After I got out of the Marine Corps and then I went back to school, I did notice, even though it was only maybe a four-year difference, but because of my experiences in the Marine Corps, they seemed so childish compared to, they didn't take things seriously. They had their parents paying for everything, and yet they were still squandering away their education. I guess that's part of being young, But at some point, if you're a sophomore or junior, you got to wake up and say, hey, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of it. So I did notice that, yeah. And I also noticed veterans kind of clump together because there's a camaraderie regardless of the branch of service you were in, that you went through an experience that other people didn't.
Yes.
And plus, the Vietnam War treated our veterans so shabbily. It wasn't their families as much as society at large. That was another bonding issue was the Vietnam War. So that's where I met my husband at Cherry Point. He had just come back from Vietnam, and he was a little rowdy.
A lively guy.
We'll leave it at that.
So going back to Parris Island,
Mm-hmm.
were you given aptitude tests at that point to determine your MOS?
We had something at the AFES building downtown in Chicago, and then yes, when we got there, we were given aptitude tests, and I see now where they get to choose their MOS, but it didn't happen that way back then, and there was no such thing as a contract. They tested you and they placed you where they wanted you and needed you. But in fact, I mean, that's why you were there. You were there to serve your country, and if that's where they wanted you, that's where you went.
And I guess, I could see where somebody who's good in math would be, they would want to work in computer operations, like this kind of logic.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I really didn't know anything about computers. My favorite anecdote is my sisters and I always played Scrabble, and I was home on leave one time, and I put the word byte down, B-Y-T-E, on the Scrabble board, and Chris challenged me, and we couldn't find it in the dictionary. I mean, maybe we had an old dictionary, but they didn't believe me that was a real word. I said, no, it's a real word. So.
No, it's true. No, it's kind of cool to get a cutting edge field at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I couldn't help wondering if it was considered hard to get into the MOS, as I think it was called 4014 electric accounting machine operator, then 4016 data processing equipment operator. Because I was reading in Appendix C that only, I think, 3% of the enlisted women were in data systems versus, let's say, 30.42% working in administration, and that was a few years later in 76. So was this considered like a, elite?
It was mostly men.
Yeah.
And we worked with civilian government employees. I worked on top of the Navy supply building, and there was kind of a secret room in back of the tape room where the guys would go in every 24 hours, and they'd always come in civilian clothes. They were Marines, but they would get locked in and locked out, and they had a special code. I never found out what that room was for, other than it was something secret. But yes, there were mostly men. There were two other girls, I think, that came later that were in data processing. So, yeah. I don't want to sound,
Yeah. No. I know. Just occurred to me. Where did you go from? Excuse me. Like, did you go directly from Parris Island boot camp to Cherry Point Air Station? Or?
Yes, I did. They didn't really send women to school back then. We had what's called OJT, on-the-job training. So I learned my skills there from I think he was a G-12. He was a retired Air Force person, this man, and he kind of showed me what I was supposed to do with wiring the panels and then sorting the cards and then loading the card reader and things. He didn't like Marines because he was in the Air Force. He especially didn't like women Marines. But anyway, so yeah, we had on-the-job training, and then as you advanced in rank, you could apply to go to like programming school or something, which I was thinking about, but it didn't happen. I didn't ship over, so I lost that option.
Oh, because you were still
well, if I would have shipped over, I could have gone to programming school. But they sent the men after boot camp to school. But if a woman, they had to be sure I was going to stay in, because in those days, if you were to get married and have a child, it was an honorable discharge. You weren't allowed to stay in. Whereas now, they can have a child and still stay in. But in those days, you just received an honorable discharge, and you were released.
But when you say shipped out, you mean like had you had a tour in Vietnam?
Oh, ship over means re-enlist. I'm sorry.
Re-enlist.
That's a terminology, yes.
Okay, no, I should have got that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, but because you didn't re-enlist, they couldn't guarantee it, so they would
right.
not
Correct. Yes.
give you the option, of course. Okay, I get it. So I think you said that this man who was training you was not excited about training a woman. Like, was he not excited about training anybody, or a woman, or both?
I think it was a woman and a Marine. Branches of the service, you kind of have a pride in your branch of service, and some people just take it a little bit farther than they should. And I don't think he didn't think women belonged in the service, is what I think.
Yeah.
That was kind of an attitude back then, that I should have stayed where I belonged. I was uppity. I don't know. I know you know who I'm talking about. Yeah.
In general, how did you find the attitudes of men toward you and other women Marines?
Well, was I walking to the chow hall between the barracks, or was I just at work? When I was at work, because I did my job, I was treated by the other Marines okay.
Yeah.
But I remember walking to the chow hall between the barracks, and the things that were yelled out the windows would curl your hair. I mean, I guess they're young men and they're full of testosterone, I don't know, but some of it was so vulgar, either you didn't go to the chow hall or you took the long way around, because it just wasn't worth listening to.
Yeah, yeah. Still something.
And it's not worth repeating.
No. No.
Leah, are you going to edit this, right?
Well, we will send it to you for review, so if you wish to
I got to wipe
out
my
some-
nose.
Okay, don't worry. Things like that are always edited
Oh,
out, or,
okay.
or coughs or things like that. You know. Don't worry. Had you heard of other women who had suffered sexual abuse, or happily not, or?
You know what? I don't even want to talk about that.
Sure. Okay.
But what I will talk about is when my husband and I got married, we put in for base housing, and we were able to get into NCO housing because he was a sergeant then and I was a corporal. And when Gary got discharged in '72, I was a corporal, which is an E4, an NCO. We had to move out of NCO housing though, because I didn't count. So that's just a form of, prejudice, I guess you want to call it, against women, and that's just the way it was then. And I have other anecdotal stories, but that's an actual recorded story, that we had to move out of NCO housing because I wasn't qualified, even though I was an NCO.
NCO.
So things like that happened. So you were sometimes made to feel like a second-class citizen. A lot of it depended on the personality of your CO, and most of them were pretty fair, but every once in a while you'd come across someone who just didn't think women belonged in the military, and they weren't afraid to let you know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, there's specific instances. Other than that, it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. People.
It was
respected
regular
you.
life, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even through life afterwards, I've found there's people that don't think women belong in any kind of business or any kind of leadership role. But the majority of people are really fair. So, I mean, I've been on the fire board for 20 years. I've been president for since 2013. That's pretty unusual.
Yes.
But and all the other men on the board, they're men on my other team, the other 4 people, and they keep electing me because I do a good job. I run a good meeting, so they're pretty fair.
Yeah, people recognize merit, and that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So so how did the two of you meet on the base?
Well, this is a really funny story, but one of my friends said, "Oh, why don't you come into the parachute jump club? Let's see about jumping out, learning how to jump with a parachute." So I said, "Okay," and I went, and this guy walked in the room, and I know it's corny, but it was love at first sight, and we've been married for 50 years, over 50 years. So,
Wow.
but he had just gotten back from Vietnam. He had just gotten out of the brig, as a matter of fact. I told you he was a little rowdy after Vietnam.
Well, maybe you have to get it out of your system in some way.
He didn't lose any rank over it, so it was minor.
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault.
That's right, it wasn't your fault.
So how long were you dating, and and it sounds like you were both in the service when you got married.
We
right?
were, yeah.
Yeah.
We got married in March of '71.
Great, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
not too long. I don't recommend whirlwind romances like that. We were just blessed and lucky that we were very compatible and it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
As an aside, did you learn how to parachute?
No, we never went back to the parachute jump club. No, but I did start getting outstanding on my shoes on inspections because he would shine my shoes, and oh my gosh, he could do such a better job than I did. He had a mirror finish on there.
Goodness,
yeah. So he'd always shine my shoes for me. Yep. Because in those days there was no Corfam or patent leather. It was spit shine.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So he would do my shoes for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where was Gary living? Like where were the men's barracks for
Well, I don't know. When we got married, where is your barracks? His barracks wasn't near mine. I don't actually know where his barracks was because we used to meet at the NCO club.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't too far from yours.
Wasn't too far. No, I took him to my first WM ball with me. Yeah.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
So
February 13th. Yeah.
so they had like social activities. It seems
Oh,
like
mhm,
yeah,
yes, yeah. There was a bowling alley on base. The NCO club was there. Trying to think, they had a nice lake to go fishing, so we used to go out on the lake, and he'd go fishing, and I'd read a book. I tried fishing, but I'm just not a fisherman. But it would be nice. You'd be out in the sun. It was a nice afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that sounds
Bring a
pleasant.
bottle of Boone's Farm or something. Ripple.
Yeah, we got married, and like the 10 days after, they sent me on
A med cruise,
a NATO operation to Turkey.
Greece and Spain. Yeah.
Oh, so this was right after you?
Yeah, we got married on a Sunday, and he left the following Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah. During Hurricane Ginger, he was out in the Atlantic Ocean in LST, was it?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, LSD.
And it knocked out the radar, and they were adrift in the sea for a while. There was fuel oil everywhere and vomit.
Oh my God. Did you know that he was at sea when it was?
I knew he was at sea, but in those days there was no way to contact. So I think,
true.
were you in Spain when you got that doctor to call me? How did you contact me? I can't remember.
I was in Greece.
Greece, yeah. So it was quite a few days before I heard,
Wow.
anything.
Oh my goodness.
But I didn't know all that was going on because it's not like it was shared. So it wasn't until after the fact that I found out all about that. So
Yeah, right.
That was
It would've
much
been-
better.
But
yeah.
sometimes that's
But I mean, the Hurricane Ginger, it did land, so I was, stateside and tore up quite a few things too. So
wow.
yeah, it was scary.
How did you communicate both with each other and also with your family or sisters? And so on?
You wrote letters. I still have my letters. Yeah, you
Yeah.
you used the mail back then. You wrote letters, or once in a while you'd get a phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did your families come to the wedding? Were they able to?
Yeah. Did your sister come? I can't remember. No. Yeah, my mother and my stepfather and my sisters came down.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It was just a small wedding. We got married in the base chapel.
Well, that's nice. That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
So going back to your work as a computer operator, what was it like? I think you'd mentioned that this was a time when key punch cards were sorted and separated by a card reader panel that required programming by hand for each job. So were you involved in programming?
Yeah, you would. So you would take this panel. It was a board. It was like an 80 by 80 panel. And if you think about the old telephone operators, how they plugged the cords in the circuit board, well, you would plug the cords in the specific slots on this board, and that would cause, I guess, the electrical impulse to read the card where the data was and to sort them. And then this machine had these different slots. There were probably 20 different slots. And the cards would get sorted into those slots depending on what you were sorting them for, alphabetically or numerically, which is about all it could do back then. Then you'd collect them together, and you'd have to stack them in the card reader, but you had to keep the humidity low in the room because otherwise the cards would warp or stick. And you had to keep it cool in the computer room so the computers wouldn't overheat, because even though they were these giant machines, they threw off a ton of heat. So you were always freezing to death in that computer room. It's cold because we had to wear a skirt, and it's short in the summer, short sleeves, and there were no sweaters and things like that. So you froze.
You froze.
Yes.
What were some of your other responsibilities in this job?
Well, as I advanced, I got to get away from the card sorter and card reader and got up into the computer room, and where I would operate the computer itself. You would have to tell the computer to read the cards in the card reader, and then you'd have to tell the computer to put that data on the tape. You'd have to tell the computer to sort that data on the tape. Then you'd have to tell the computer to print out that data on there. Then you'd have to take that paper, which was the paper that was connected with the ridges on the side, and you'd have to separate those pieces of paper and collate them into book form. So it was not as people think of computers today. It was almost like secretarial duties practically, yeah. Because the programs the programs were actually fed into the computer body by tape too. The disc wasn't invented, the microchip wasn't invented. It was way before then. If you think the Twilight Zone where they show the computer with the lights beeping, that's kind of what it was.
This room, too.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah.
Did you like that? Like, were you excited by being involved in new technology?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. I really did. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually took some programming courses, but it was COBOL and Fortran and BAL, which probably no one's even heard of.
Well,
I mean, yeah, that's so obsolete, yeah.
As an undergraduate, people were taking these courses.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. So I always had leaned more towards science, so I actually was studying to be a chemical engineer, and then my husband got hurt, so I took what credit hours I had and went through nursing school and became an RN.
Oh, okay, okay. So, did you, I mean, I don't know if I should ask it here or not, but did you get hurt while in service?
No.
No, yeah, okay.
Some of the side effects, though, of why he didn't heal, I think, are from exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam.
Oh.
But that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah. How did you move up the ranks?
Well, and actually, when I was looking at my DD 214, I was put up for meritorious corporal and meritorious sergeant, but because I received meritorious corporal, I can't remember if that's listed on there or not, but meritorious sergeant, they didn't even list it on there because I didn't get it. I got it ahead of time because I made sergeant under 3. I made sergeant in 2 years and 8 months. But I noticed on my husband's, they list all meritorious masts and things like that, and I don't see any of that listed on mine, so maybe, I guess it didn't count. I don't know. I moved up the ranks pretty well because usually you can make corporal in 3 years, but my husband made sergeant under 2 years. I made sergeant under 3, which is still pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you get promoted, you get more responsibility and you get less. Like when they would have field days at the barracks, by the time I was a corporal, I just got to watch and tell people what to do. I didn't have to do the actual raking. Or for the garden party for the field day, I'd say, okay, you clean this room and you clean that room. And I would get to help with inspections sometime. My first sergeant really liked me because my husband fixed her air conditioner. So, she liked me a lot. So it was easy for me in the barracks then. I did, though, even though I was married and lived off base, I had to maintain a rack in the barracks.
You did?
I always had to have one. I had to stand my inspections there, yes.
So how would you, right, the word is like manage the women that would have been under your authority?
That was basically when I was in the barracks.
Okay.
So I would have duty NCO, and that's a 24-hour duty where you make sure all the doors are locked, you make sure who's ever on fire watch is doing what they're supposed to do, and you try to solve any problems that happen. It's more of a like a guard type of a duty. I didn't walk around with a weapon or anything, but that was a 24-hour, and as you advanced in rank, you would get more and more of that.
Yeah. What was your impression just of the Cherry Point Air Station in general, with all the different aircraft and so on? And
It was a beautiful air station. It really was. My one friend, Kathleen, she worked with the Air Wing.
Mm-hmm.
She was a secretary in the office. So we went there one time and we had a picture taken. I should have brought that. I didn't even think of it. But mostly, to me, it was like going to work every day and doing my job and wearing a uniform and knowing military protocol and serving my country. I never really thought of it as anything out of the ordinary until I was out of the Marine Corps and in the civilian world and realized it was pretty remarkable. It was kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of after the fact.
Yeah.
I don't. But were you ever concerned about being deployed to Vietnam? Or
They didn't really send women back then. I think in all of Vietnam there were 21 for the entirety of it, female Marines over in Vietnam, and they were more in things like communication and that sort of thing. Yeah, they weren't put in combat situations per se.
Okay.
It just didn't happen.
Out of curiosity, after meeting your husband and hearing about Vietnam, like, did your opinions stay the same? Did they change, like, about the Vietnam War and so on?
Well, you kind of have several opinions about it. I mean, first of all, these young men, even though they were drafted, they still love their country as much as anyone else, and they went over there to do a good job. But the fact that our country is interfering in other countries' business, it was communism, so it's not the same as, say, social re-engineering someplace in the Middle East. I mean, these communists were slaughtering people, and we were trying to help them.
Yeah.
So it's mixed feelings about it. I don't think it was managed as well as it could have been, but they're honorable people, those veterans that served in Vietnam, and they need to be recognized as such.
Do you think there's more recognition now than?
Oh, definitely, and I think part of it has to do with my generation. I know one of the reasons I'm involved in so many veterans organizations is because I never want another veteran to come home and feel unwelcome or unloved by his country like our Vietnam veterans did. And as long as I'm around, it's not going to happen when anyone's around me.
Well, I remember speaking to a Vietnam War veteran, and he kept saying, 'cause he kept meeting more and more people coming from the States, he would hear more and more hostile reactions, that he actually felt concerned returning home, and it was relieved that his father hugged him right away. And
Exactly. I had a friend, who was walking through the airport. People threw things at him, like wadded up pieces of paper and stuff, and hollered at him, "You're a baby killer." That's terrible. Yeah, so I mean, families welcomed their individual people, but yeah, it was nasty then. So I notice a lot of times when we're out now, even people will go up to my husband and say, "Thank you for your service." Of course, they don't say it's for me, not that I'm looking for it, but they just don't expect a woman to be in the Marine Corps. Not that I have my Eagle Globe and Anchor earrings on, I got my shirt on, it doesn't matter. I'm a support group. I'm kind of used to it by now. Whatever. I know what I did.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's right. So what happens after your active duty finished?
Then like I said, I went to school and took some programming classes, but they really didn't click. I was still taking biology and chemistry at the same time. So then when my husband got injured, I had my first child then, and then my husband got injured, so that's when I became an RN. And quite frankly, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I never in my life thought about being an RN, but I love it. I loved being an RN. It was wonderful. And then I went to the ER and I found my place in life. It was just great.
It's great. Yeah. Where did you study and where were you living?
In Lamont. I got my associate's degree from Joliet Junior College of Nursing, and then I got my baccalaureate degree from Lewis University, and I actually got the Academic Excellence Award from the College of Nursing, which I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah.
I worked at Payless Hospital for many years in telemetry and then the ER. I got my trauma nurse license at Christ Hospital, so I was licensed with the state of Illinois.
Wow.
I'm retired now, so a lot of my licenses are lapsed.
Sure. But no, so it sounded like you had a good career.
Yes, I loved it. It was wonderful. I think you have that nurturing gene inside you, and when you're an RN, you get to actually use it for the public too. So.
Yeah.
Not that there weren't frustrating times, but
no.
Overall, it's wonderful.
Very caring profession.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love nurses. I don't know if I'm supposed to be looking in the camera or not, but
it's all good.
Okay.
I was going to say, well, you mentioned that you had, I think you have a son and a daughter.
Yes.
And you mentioned, I think, that your son enlisted in the Marines, your daughter in the Army as a combat medic. Your son-in-law served several tours in Afghanistan. So, but I guess my question is, at a time when less than 1% of the population served, how did you and your husband succeed in inspiring your children?
I'm not sure. I think probably we just transmitted to them that we love our country, and We've always had our flags out. We've always recognized holidays, not just as a time to barbecue, but we would actually go and visit, grave sites and put flags out. We joined the VFW right when we got home, so I've been a VFW auxiliary member for 45 years. Gary's been a member for 40 years. So Memorial Day and Veterans Day, we would go out with the ladies and the men, and we'd have a flag ceremony in front of the monuments. So I think our children saw that. And even when I was working, when I couldn't be as active, I still, those two holidays, and of course the Marine Corps birthday, that never gets forgotten. That's November 10th, 1775.
Wow, the oldest one. So what would you do on a typical commemoration of the Marine
Oh,
Corps
there's
Day?
always a ball somewhere. There's balls all over the place. Yeah, so sometimes if you can't get out, you just raise a glass and say cheers. But
Yeah.
when November 10th comes around, just check out, just type it in and you'll see all the different places. There's probably 15, 20 of them.
Wow.
From fancy balls to just casual, which is what they should be, is casual, because Tun Tavern, the rumor has it, it started in Tun Tavern. It's not actually legit, no one knows, but it started in a tavern
Casual.
recruiting. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
That's right. Would you have liked to have been in combat? Like just, I think last week I was reading that a female soldier became part of the Naval Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewmen, like the people who transport the SEALs and have their own special missions. Like, would you have liked to have been in combat?
I don't begrudge anyone going into combat, but probably because my nature is more toward nurturing, I would only have wanted to be in combat to fix people that were hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know that I never really thought about combat per se. I know how to handle a weapon just because of my father taught me, my husband taught me. But it's not something that I would lean to. I don't care if it's someone else's choice.
Sure.
But no, that's not something I would lean to.
Yeah.
If it was required, which I thought it should have been, all military should know how to handle a weapon. I wish I would have been taught in the Marine Corps, but as far as going into combat, no, it didn't really enter my head. I didn't care either way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Which message would you like to convey to young people of today, in particular, maybe young women?
Be true to yourself, be strong, do the best you can do, don't give up. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do something if it's something you really want to do, and be an honorable person.
So, as you know, the Pritzker Military Museum and Library is dedicated to the citizen soldier. We collect artifacts, stories. So what does the term citizen soldier mean to you?
It means an ordinary, regular person that loves their country and wants to give back to it in return.
Yeah, nice. Is there something that we didn't discuss today that you would like to address?
Oh gosh.
Or
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything. We could list all the organizations I belong to. I don't know.
maybe talk about have you been more active since retirement? So maybe list them again, or okay.
Yeah. Since I've retired, I have been a member of the Women Marines Association for quite a few years, and the VFW Auxiliary and the Marine Corps League. But since I've retired, I've actually been able to take positions in the leadership of these organizations. The American Legion I belong to at Cantigny Post in Wheaton, and the Marine Corps League in DuPage County. And like I said, I just joined the Marine Corps League Auxiliary to support the wives of Marines, because I am also a wife of a Marine, even though I'm a Marine. And the Women Marines Association, I'm past president of that, the Blanche Osborne chapter in Northern Illinois. There used to be 2 chapters, but I'm finding people of an age, like maybe their 30s or 40s, are still so busy with their families and working that they don't really have time for organizations, but I'm hoping I can get people to just join so that when they do get some free time, they can be more active. But that's another organization that's near and dear to my heart, is the Women Marines Association.
Oh, okay, yeah. Are you succeeding in starting to get new members?
I think I am. Yeah.
relatively?
In fact, my Fire Prevention Bureau chief, his daughter, when she graduated from high school, she was interested in joining the military. So of course I exposed her to the Marine Corps League, and she ended up joining the Marines, and she has since been discharged, and she's now joined the Marine Corps League.
Oh my.
So yeah, I'm working on her to get into the Women Marines Association too. So
So it's growing.
yeah, slowly but surely, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's just that still, after all this time, we have 22 veterans committing suicide on average a day. I'm chairman of the Veterans and Family Support Committee for the 19th District of the VFW Auxiliary, and it just breaks my heart that people are still talking about it. My pin.
Do you need your mic up there?
The mic is pretty close to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a pin that we wear on our shirts at the auxiliary when we go to meetings to make people aware and to keep suicide in the forefront of their minds. A lot of times I find in just talking to people who deal with it on a professional level that they look at it as a sign of weakness to talk about mental health problems and depression and not fitting in society. And there's different reasons why people get depressed to the point that they think taking their life is the only option. They feel trapped in a situation they don't know how to escape. So I'm hoping that when we wear these pins that people will become more aware of it and try to figure out a way to actually stop this cycle, decrease this cycle. It's not going down, and it should be as important as, safety car seats for babies in the seat as veteran suicide. I mean, these people gave their lives for, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years, whatever it is. They signed that blank check that says, you can do with me what you will while I'm serving. And we need to remember that. We need to take care of them. So that's just was my little spiel about veteran suicide. There's a program, General, he's an retired Air Force general. He has a wonderful program, and I'm sorry I can't think of the name right now. But I will email it to you because he speaks all around the country.
What do you think the average person can do to help support veterans to decrease depression, or should there be more government programs like transitioning to civilian workforce and so on?
Well, I know there are ways that the government's trying to help, but it's almost an individual problem. I mean, would you feel comfortable talking to a stranger about a personal issue that was bothering you? No. I think people themselves need to be aware of what's going on with their individual social group, family group, community group, and observe if someone seems a little more distant than usual, or someone doesn't talk about something, or if a subject is brought up, they seem real reluctant, or they stammer and hem and haw. Try to bring them out, one-on-one. Private conversations are the best. And if you do have a clue that someone's having problems, either encourage them to get help with a professional or take them yourself. Sometimes you just have to take the bull by the horns and say, please let me help you. I care. I don't want you to die. You have to say it as bluntly as that.
Yeah.
To save that life. And everyone doesn't have the same experiences, so sometimes talking to one person might not work, but talking to someone else who went through a similar experience is a huge help.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Did you want to, put your hat?
Put my cover on?
Yeah, and to talk about it a little bit?
All right, so this is my cover for Women Marines Association, the Blanche Osborne chapter. Stephanie Kifowit, who is the representative for, I think, the 81st District in Illinois. She's our current president. We have, because of COVID, our meetings have been kind of jacked up, so we haven't really met. We've been Zoom meeting. And actually tonight, one of our youngest members is going to be shipped out overseas, so we're going to have a little Zoom goodbye for her.
Oh,
Ellie. Bye, Ellie.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's nice. Here's my name tag for that one. This is my DuPage Marines name tag. This is my VFW Auxiliary name tag. This is my American Legion name tag. And this is my Lemont Fire Protection District name tag. And these are my ribbons. These are my earned ribbons. Good conduct and national defense, but they're mine.
Right, your devil dog.
No, that's not a real ribbon. These are real.
These are real. Yeah.
This is my 45 years in the auxiliary pin. And this is my favorite pin. This is the American flag and the Marine flag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And you'll also be participating in the honor flight, the women's honor flight, her story.
I'm hoping I will be. I haven't gotten the date yet, actually. So I don't know if
yeah.
maybe I got postponed till the next one.
I don't know the details, and I'm sure that if there was a date, that everybody would have been informed. I mean, I'm in touch with Jenny Narcy, but I don't know the details of the trip.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. We had our 100th anniversary for the Women Marines Association in Washington D.C. In 2018, but it was a convention, so I was basically in the hotel the whole time, going to meetings, and so I didn't get to see Washington D.C. So I'm really looking forward to this trip because I want to go around and see the monuments and the memorials.
Yes, it's important. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I think you've talked about it before, but maybe to sum up, would you like to say in what ways being in the Marine Corps helped you, or for the rest of your life, civilian life?
Sure. It helped me. It helped develop my character and make me a more determined person, a person who saw responsibility as not something that was an option. It taught me to be proud of a good job and to always try to do a good job. It taught me to be proud to be a Marine. It further increased my love of my country and how wonderful it is and what wonderful opportunities we have here. You just keep trying. Sometimes things don't always work out, but you just have to keep trying to never give up. Improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Oh, improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Semper Fidelis.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, I would like to thank you for your service and for sharing your story today. Here's a challenge.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.